Well, hello, that's me again. Today is July 12th, it's Wednesday, and you probably know what I'm going to be talking about. And I'm going to be talking about the results of much wanted and touted NATO summit, where the whole steam went into the whistle as was expected, and my task here is not to discuss those minutiae of whatever those guys agreed upon, but probably this very now famous photo explains pretty much everything you need to know about NATO and its support for Ukraine. And the question is not that this G7 issued all kinds of derisible statements about the fact that they will continue to support the, democratic Ukraine, whatever that means, and that they will be supplying weapons and training and intel. Yeah, sure, they do it now anyway. So, and they talk about the long range weapons eventually. What kind of long range? You have the French Scalp and UK knockoff Storm Shadow. So that's very long range. And so, what else can they provide? Tomahawks? I don't think so. United States will go for that. And then again, it's obsolete missile anyway. So, and when you look at this, is like, yeah, sure, there was so many promises now, and guess what? It all comes down to the fact that Mr. Zelensky obviously accused, as was expected, actually. He accused the West and blamed the West for the fact that, Ukraine counteroffensive shortcomings. Well, it's not shortcomings. It's actually a catastrophe, a full-blown catastrophe. But here we are. Kyiv hasn't received enough military assistance from the West to succeed in its counteroffensive against Russia. A joint investigation led by Ukrainian news outlet has claimed. Some EU member states acted too slowly and selfishly to produce and ship enough supplies, the probe, which was funded by Brussels, has found. And it's again, this is all legerdemain, basically, and this is all manipulation and juxtapositioning of facts. But the fact is, Europe cannot provide enough anything to Ukraine, and actually NATO as a whole, to get the victory over Russia in what's left of Ukraine, and obviously they never penetrated even the first line of defense. Even the most staunch and fanatical allies of Ukraine, so to speak. They're not really allies of Ukraine. They view Ukraine as merely cannon fodder, which it is. They have to admit now, you can go to my blog and look attentively at the interview, so to speak, or cetera, by General Kimmett, which is risible. It's laughable, actually. I don't know why American senior and highest officer have to reduce themselves to the basically status of a clown. But, I mean, the guy, even he admits that yeah, it's, that doesn't work like this, and this is not what we expected. And then, of course, he does this stupid thing, which is, of course, drawing imaginary arrows to where Ukraine could have enjoyed at least some success. It couldn't have, and NATO actually did all it could and even more. And here we have to go to the basically results of the this counter-offensive, so to speak, and we go to none other than Mr. Shoigu, who basically explained the fate of the counter-offensive, if you wish, and he did it yesterday and it was carried by all major Russian outlets, and he spoke about the situation on the front and about the losses of Ukraine from the start of this counteroffensive, which, as you all know, started on the 4th of June. As you can see yourself, he states that as a result, everything they approached this NATO summit, and a lot of this counteroffensive was, of course, tied to this summit, from the 4th of July, the losses of the enemy constituted more than 26,000 KIAs and 3,000 units of different type of armaments, he explained. And then he went to kind of give the, so to speak, the spread, a lot of it, not full spread, about the losses of armed forces of Ukraine, and he basically reports that Russian army annihilated more than 1,200 units of the armored vehicles, including 914 units of the special automobile equipment, so 25 MLRS vehicles, 17 German Leopard tanks, 12 American BMP Bradleys, 403 artillery pieces, 5 French wheeled tanks AMX, 1,244 tank and other armored vehicles. So when you look at this, it's just like, yeah, that's pretty impressive. Then, of course, Russian air defense systems shot down 176 shells, or basically rocket-assisted projectiles, HIMARS, 27 Storm Shadows, 483 UAVs, and so there's no a single axis on which the enemy achieved any kind of objectives, which is true, absolutely, because they didn't even approach the first line of defense. And then, of course, Mr. Shoigu started explaining how this whole thing works in terms of the military-industrial complex of Russia. And here it is. And here's what he states. In accordance to Shoigu, the quantity of the bought equipment in accordance to Gosobоронзаказ, which is a state defense order, from March of the last year grew 1.8 times. Just in this year alone, more than 5 times. So, and when you begin to look at the numbers, obviously he's not at the liberty to disclose all necessary numbers, because obviously it constitutes not only state secret, it also gives a little bit of the advantage for the intel services of NATO who try to collect this information. But here it is. Legendary Ural Vagon Zavod, which is the main tank producer, increased or ramped up the production and capital repair of the tanks T-72 and T-90 3.6 times. Kurgan machine building plant increased the shipments and repair of BMP-3 2.1 times. The production of the large UAVs Orlan 10 and Orlan 30 grew 53 times. And so when you begin to look at this, and especially look at the amount of ammunition which is produced there, it's grew more than 10 times when you consider the beginning of the last year. So you understand that what Russia did economically, militarily, is absolutely stunning. I mean, the whole Russian military and industrial complex now is firing on all cylinders. And that is why when somebody talks about, supplying Ukraine with something like, weapons, and that somehow NATO will be able to ramp up production on something, yeah, it's reasonable. Why it is reasonable? And let me again explain to you, and I did it before, but we need to go back to this and look up again what I wrote. Again, well, now it's almost 5 years ago, and it is a boring book. There's a lot of math in it, a lot of numbers, formulas, and things like that. It's a real revolution in military affairs, but look what I used. And I actually demolished it after that, and that's the whole point of the book. And look what I used there as the, so to speak, reference point. And even this reference point, however wrong, is in itself serves a really useful purpose, because you can demonstrate using it how all this, strategic planning in the West is absolutely reasonable. Those people do not understand what they are dealing with. They do not understand actually actually how their own economies work, forget about understanding how Russian economy works. And here it is. I was using the actually what amounts to Rand inspired but then modified by Russian applied mathematicians formula, which is called the status. This is the national status formula, which is, as you can see yourself, is represented by the function of status of time, s of t, and it's basically product of the function of influence, fa of t, and geopolitical potential, of which is g of t. Everything, of course, t standing for the time, and of course it accounts for whatever you have at this particular time, whatever the values you begin to produce to when you want to express your status, multiplying these two important elements, obviously. And when you look at this, you can see yourself that you can demonstrated by simplest multiplication operation. For example, if your fa of t somehow equals 5 and geopolitical potential equal g of t equals 3, 5 times 3 equals 15, whatever that means. You know, these are non-metric, just merely numbers, and you will know approximately how it all basically realizes itself in real life. But of course the model is not exactly precise, because it gets us constantly. For example, when you go to the influence function, look what it gives us primarily. Yes, the formula itself is kind of long, you know, sausage, mathematical sausage with all kinds of those sigmas and fractionate or decimal power or exponents, which are of course the type of the roots you have to take out from the multipliers. But look at this. As you can see yourself, you still have to multiply everything in this function of influence, and there is a Ku is a parameter of state management, which is defined by experts, and we are experts here, and we can define this factor later. Exactly how you define this factor Ku. Is the United States governed and managed properly? No. Is Europe managed properly? No. It's catastrophe. And then of course when you get to this point, you actually begin to get this multiplier 1 minus Ku actually approaching 0, which of course immediately diminishes, as a chain reaction, all other the result of this FA. But look at this, and immediately we get into this Y. What is Y? It's nation's GDP. Again, what is nation's GDP? Nation's GDP is the fictional number invented by the guys from Wall Street Journal and Chicago School of Economics, and has no relations to the real life whatsoever. And that immediately shows you the vulnerability and susceptibility of this whole formula to the basically junk data and economic data from the West, like be that Wall Street or whatever they present, is primarily junk. Those data sets on the GDP are mostly virtual economy, which is absolutely trash. So, and then you go into the coalition thing, like is the number of member nations of the particular military political bloc. And here you also have to come to the understanding that sometimes having many allies is actually a burden which diminishes your power, which is happening to NATO. And then of course you have the GI, geopolitical potential of any given member nation. And once you even gather information and you make any sense of it, for example, what is nation's GDP? You go there and multiply it, and then suddenly what you thought was very powerful turns out to be extremely weak. And fact is, it works to a degree. I'm not saying that this is correct formula, as I already stated. I demolished it for a reason that multipliers themselves are themselves very tentative at best. Primarily they are BS, which is created in the deep recesses of all kinds of the, shysters, be that Rand, be that any other think tank in the West. And then, of course, you have to multiply it by geopolitical potential. And guess what? You go to the geopolitical potential, and again, this GT, there are a bunch of multipliers there. XM, which is military index, D, which is the demography, E, again, economics. How do you portray this economics? How you factor it into these multipliers that it makes any sense? So, and when you look at this, and while you may agree with general vector of this model, when you use the data which emanates from the West and which is being paraded as the only non-alternative truth, if you wish, so what are you going to do? Well, let me demonstrate to you. As you already know, the only thing which matters in anything is the tangibles. The tangibles are what defines actually economic and military and political power of the state. Just to show you how people use those models and they abuse it, and even when they abuse it or use them incorrectly, if you go to the fanboys website of the Global Firepower from 2023, even that you get, guess what? If you look attentively at the index of the firepower, the smaller the index is, the better it is, evidently here. You can still see yourself that United States, obviously, for some reason, put them number 1, Russia is number 2, China is number 3, India number 4, and then of course United Kingdom somehow ends up there as number 5. Why? Maybe because they're nuclear weapons, but obviously we have to understand that the real policy, so to speak, a kinetic policy, if you wish, is done on the conventional level. You either can do conventional forces and combined arms warfare, or you don't. But here it is. This is one of those things which is based on some iterations of what I just showed you. But as I already stated, everything in our life is built on tangibles. I don't care if I have many zeros in some bank's computer, granted that sometimes I will not be able to even withdraw majority of those zeros. When instead of it, I can have actually the house, nice one, which is completely paid off, and I have a nice property, tangible things, and I have the very reliable supply of the farm food and things of this nature. So guess what you would go with? Of course, normal people will go with what I just described to you. They want to have tangible things which you can use, your house, your electricity or grid, and things of this nature. But when your whole idea of the power is built around all those virtual things like GDP, let me demonstrate to you why this formula breaks down, because actually when you begin to look at NATO even from the point of view of this formula, of this model, if you wish, you begin to understand that basically the outcome of this NATO summit couldn't have been any other than what it is. A lot of big words, a lot of big promises, and then of course, Ukraine just thrown out in the wind, to dry out there. So it's just to dry. And here it is. Just again, people need to be reminded this periodically. And here's my reminding. I'm trying to remind you what is this all about. Again, we're going to the professional sources primarily, for example, like steel production. Why steel production matters? Well, as you saw yourself, steel production automatically transfers itself into tanks, into shells, into what have you, which is a military equipment. And even if you look at March, this is the latest, but you already know that Russian economy now grows like it's, tremendously ramping it up. You can see yourself that United States and Russia produce actually the same amount of steel. There you go. As you can see yourself, Germany is dwarfed by steel production in the United States and Russia. But you also see yourself that actually minus 1.3 index for Russia is not true anymore, because actually the production have been ramped up and now it's in the positive territory. And actually today we're looking at the Russia probably outproducing United States, and then of course you can see China, which produces outproduces everybody by the order of magnitude. Do you see any other serious big time hunches like France or UK in this steel production? No, of course you don't. So let's continue, but still, as you know, it's important part of the not only a military-industrial complex, but economic development of the country. Then we go to the other crucial product without which you will not have combat aviation. You have nothing without it, and it is, of course, aluminum production. And guess what? Primary aluminum production 2021. Of course, China dominates everything here, but look at this. Russia produces 5 times the number of aluminum, and the only aluminum United States can procure is from Canada. Then Russia and Canada and United States begin to produce about the same amount of aluminum, which is still very significant. It's 3.6 million tons, I believe. And when you look at this continuously through all those actual indices which basically define economy, which define your geopolitical potential, which define your military, you begin to arrive to the point that, yeah, that is really kind of funny. And look at this. You can go and now take a look at the oil production, and again, this was taken from this 2023, the latest update, so to speak. It's the latest data from United States Energy Information Administration, so you cannot blame me on using here some kind of the, you know, tendentious or basically biased data. No, you can see yourself. Russia and United States also produce almost the same amount of oil. And again, don't forget, Russia is more than 2 times smaller in population than the United States. And if you look at the list, again, of the oil producers, do you see any European country here? Do you see any France? Do you see any UK here? No, of course. The only country which, actually European country which approaches anything as the diagram shows is Norway. But that's about it. The rest of it, I mean, Europe doesn't even factor in here. And again, as I already stated, and I am on the record for many years now, the superpower club is still extremely exclusive. During the Cold War 1.0, it had only 2 members. It was the United States of America and Soviet Union. Now it has 3. It is China, United States, and Russia. It's still exclusive. And no matter what Europe tries to do, no matter how they huff and puff, no matter how many storm shadows will they send to the battlefield there, the deed is done, basically. That's it. Ukraine is done. And even the most ardent and staunch supporters of Ukraine and killing Russians are admitting now it is catastrophe. It is catastrophe, and it continues every day now, because now Russians are on the offensive around Avdiivka. They're going towards Red Liman, and again, this is not even big red, so to speak, arrow offensive. No. The strategic defensive posture in which Russia sits does not preclude offensive actions. Not at all. In fact, is very often your strategic defense does include a very large share of the specifically attacking offensive actions. And this is what is happening now. Ukraine is done militarily, and nothing the West can do, because it absolutely depleted all of its stocks. And it cannot ramp up anything anytime soon. And then again, can it even ramp it up in the future, let's say even distant future? I don't think so. And you can go to my blog where I discuss this issue, speaking about a wonderful piece by Larry Johnson, and of course by incomparable Michael Hudson about America's deindustrialization and why America cannot reindustrialize, why it is all in vain. The same goes to Europe, even more so, because Europe is basically a lunch for the United States. And we can see it. And the desperation is so bad, and for some reason it dawns on them, then basically, yeah, we screwed, guys, it's over, and that even we have this risible thing. Here's the guy, he served in the UK army. Sure, so I don't know why he served in the UK army. Probably he was basically some kind of guy on the bakery, working in bakery. Oh, I don't know. Robert Clark, yeah, he is all those, scholarly things, some strategic, I guess, strategic think tankdom. But look what he writes. In the Telegraph, no less, obviously, it's a tabloid. You cannot get anything decent from the United Kingdom. All of it is tabloid, including the Times of London, what have you. And no normal people really write there anything. And here it is. He writes about the fact that if Sweden joins NATO, Sweden giant killer military is built for one thing, fighting Russia. And then you can go through this basically delusion, and well, it's basically delirium what he writes, which basically discloses his professional level as a military guy, evidently, because he definitely didn't serve in anything serious, in any serious capacity, has zero military academic background. But he writes about how this massive 25,000 active military personnel plus about another 20,000 National Guard of Sweden with 120 tanks, Leopard 2 no less, is about to defeat those damn Ruskies. I mean, how do you explain to those imbeciles that not only the Sweden is it's actually even funnier armed forces than United Kingdom. Plus, it is armed forces which never experienced any kind of the serious combined arms warfare operations, and they probably don't even know how to plan it, because they don't even know how to plan it in Pentagon. So what do you expect? And the Pentagon has been in wars, so well, I don't know, non-stop for how many years, decades, really, and they still didn't learn anything. But then you have Sweden, and I don't know, it's just 120 tanks. Wow, so yeah, it's about I'll say a week for in the serious war for Russia to dispose of all their basically armor. And when you look at this, and it's like, good God, it's just panopticon. It's the show of complete imbecility. And if you think so that I am just being facetious or I'm just being actually obnoxious, constantly pointing this out, no, look at this. This is the guy. I don't know how this war criminal relic is still touted in the West as one of the greatest diplomats. He never was a good diplomat to start with. He was a cynical shyster who was promoting himself. But look at this. Kissinger falls victim to Russian pranksters posing as Zelensky. Yeah, those famous Vavan and Lexus got this elder statesman of the United States, and they turned him into clown. And most of them are. And look at this. He was the centenarian, thought that he was talking to the Ukrainian leader himself. And he was talking about Nord Stream 2. I frankly have thought it was you, Kissinger finally said, according to the dubbed over translation of the exchange. Zelensky, in response, assured the Americans that Ukraine was not behind the sabotage, to which Kissinger said he didn't blame Kiev and made it clear that his remark was not meant as a criticism. So there you go, guys. This is the level. This is the level of economics. This is the level of the military power of the West, so to speak, as basically embodied by Mr. Kissinger, who still refuses to actually go away, and yeah, there are some people who still think that he is a great statesman and a great diplomat. What can I say? Oh my God. And that you can see now as the result of all those big words and the conclusions of the NATO summit. NATO is a dead man walking. It could have been still around for a while if it wouldn't have gotten itself into this affair with Ukraine. But now, as you can see yourself, the whole basically military myth of NATO in the United States have been blown out to smithereens. And what you do after that? How do you calculate your function of influence? The rest of the world sees it very clearly. Believe me, they are not stupid people. The fact that they have different color or different, eyes or different what have you, doesn't mean that they are stupid. There are many smart people out there everywhere in South America, obviously in China and in East Asia, be that, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, what have you, or be that in Africa. They see it all. They understand it. And for those people who still don't know, yeah, Iran now is officially the member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And so, what can I say, guys? This is what I wanted to tell you today and remind you again about the framework, those fundamentals, those basics which define our life. And if it helped you to understand what is going on, well, good for you and probably good for me. And that's what I wanted to tell you today, guys. And as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel and support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee or two. And have a nice rest of your week, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.